Kelly, and it's very nice to meet everyone here. I don't know about you all, but I cannot wait to show off my Nomi network notebook. It has this beautiful, intricate design on it, so it's very pretty. I'm very honored to be here today to talk about how supply chains can be used and fixed to reduce economic disparities and create sustainable opportunities for everyone globally. My name is Sonakshi Kapoor, and I am a sustainability and ESG lawyer at DLA Piper, which is a global law firm, and I will be moderating our next panel, closing wealth gaps, innovations in global supply chain. We have a very interesting lineup of panelists here. We have Sarah, Anant, Wayne, and Supei. You can read about their remarkable achievements and experiences on the bios, which is available on the website. You can scan the QR code, which is on your paper in the folder that you received, and read up on their bios. But we are also taking questions at the end of this panel. So if you want to submit any questions for the panelists, again, scan the QR code, click on the active question link, and just type in your questions. As an icebreaker for our panelists, I want to talk about something that Nomi Network is doing something very important for our society right now, and that is providing mentorship and career advice to women and girls who join the Nomi Network. So for our panelists, when you look back and think about your career, and when you look back and think about any career advice that you have received that has stuck with you, what would that be? Sarah, we'll start with you.
Sure, I'm on the hot seat. When I was thinking about this, for me, I feel like you can't overstate the power of collaboration and relationship building, and it just amplifies good work so much and allows so much more to happen. And you never know what doors it will open. I know that came up this morning in the opening remarks, just how critical it is to work well with people.
Yeah, I would say in general, some advice that I've thought about a lot, or general ideas, is around courage and fearlessness. I think in business, obviously, you're taking a lot of decisions, so you need to have confidence in your decisions. But in the context of what we're talking about today, trying out new ideas, innovating, that also requires courage and confidence that you'll figure out a way to make things work.
Wait.
And as for me, I tend to think in threes. You guys hear me? No? Can you hear me now? Then okay, great. I tend to think in threes. So for me, the first one that comes to mind is be vulnerable. I think it's important that you lean into discomfort when you're in unfamiliar situations and be vulnerable, because that's how you learn. Two is be humble. I think you can take an entire life and build a reputation and lose it within a second. And then lastly, make lots of mistakes. I think the majority of great inventions and great discoveries came from a wealth of mistakes prior to people that are doing things today. So again, vulnerability, be humble, and make lots of mistakes.
All right. Those great advice. So for some reason, I always want to be an entrepreneur. But ever since I started Nomi, it's a nonprofit, so I never consider myself an entrepreneur. Okay, until literally a few years back, and I met this very successful entrepreneur, and he defined entrepreneur as the relentless pursuit of finding solution for problems we face. Relentless pursuit of finding solution for problem we face, and a light bulb went on. Like, oh my goodness, I am entrepreneur. It's not exclusive for the for-profit. We actually need more entrepreneurs in nonprofit to find solutions for some of the biggest problems we face today.
That was very well said. Thank you for sharing this. And now let's jump into the questions. Sarah, my question is for you, the first one actually. The theme of our summit is bold investments, and Patagonia recently made an announcement that was a bold move. So can you share more about this announcement and the deeper why behind this announcement?
Sure. So Patagonia, we just celebrated our 50th year anniversary of being in business. And we have been talking a lot about how the first 50 years felt like a bit of an experiment. really testing the hypothesis. Could a company be successful while making super high quality product, trying to reduce impact, and also find solutions to inspire, solutions to the climate crisis? And it felt like the answer was absolutely yes. We definitely are very successful, but that there's so much room to do more. And what would the next 50 years look like? So we recently changed our mission statement to "We're in business to save our home planet," which is very bold. And then just about 1 year ago exactly, we had a huge announcement. We call it Going Purpose. And we completely restructured the company. So the founder basically said, our only shareholder going forward is Planet Earth, and all profits that we make will now be channeled into Planet Earth. So it was definitely bold, a really wonderful moment to be at the company, definitely humbling. And how it works, or how it's set up, is we have new entities in the company. So we have something that's called the Holdfast Collective, which is the majority. And how it works is any profits we make after they're funneled back into what costs keep the business running, then can be donated to various causes, protecting things like public lands or waters and thriving communities. And so it's a 501(c). And then we also have a purpose trust, and that is where our founders and our board of directors sit. They have the only voting stock in the company, and the reason that they're set up is to make sure that our vision and our mission stays aligned in perpetuity. So like I said, we just celebrated our year. They're calling it Purposeversary, and we had the news that we donated $50 million this year across 10 different countries to different NGOs and partners in the space of fighting climate change. So it's really exciting. So thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Anant, my next question is for you. So Shahi Exports has a very rich legacy of being started by your grandmother. And Shahi Exports is also a very critical on-the-ground partner for Nomi Networks for their workforce development program in India. So Anant, could you share a little bit more about your grandmother starting the company and what resonated with you about joining Nomi Network?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. So currently, Shahi is one of the largest apparel garment manufacturers and exporters based in India. But our journey began at a much smaller scale, and similar to Patagonia, actually, we're approaching our 50-year anniversary. So in 1974, my grandmother started Shahi. She was a tailor in a factory before that, and she had learned sewing as a kid, and when she joined this factory, she was interested to earn an income and provide for her family. She had 2 kids, my dad and my uncle, and she realized after working in the factory that it was hard to kind of manage the competing demands on her time. So she dropped out of the factory job, but the factory owner asked her if she would like to continue working on the pieces from home. And so the ease of working from home definitely facilitated her ability to continue working. She started with just herself, but then asked other women in her neighborhood and her community to come join. And so the operation started with just 10 machines at home, just women working in the household. And I think in the 70s in India, women entrepreneurs, the concept wasn't heard of so much. So in that way, she's definitely inspiring. Today, Shahi has over 115,000 employees across India. We operate in 9 states. 70% of our workforce is women. And I think that the apparel industry definitely holds a really important potential to increase female labor force participation. In India, it's a problem. Less than 1 in 4 women in India engage in paid work. And the trend is the opposite in the garment sector, especially for rural women. So creating employment opportunities has always been a key feature of the business. But I think that the reason why our partnership with Nomi Network resonates so deeply is because the focus on empowering women from marginalized communities. It really aligns with our commitments to gender equality, social inclusion, and I think that in addition to job creation, now we're sort of realizing that actually, the economic empowerment is important, but we want to ensure that we're creating high quality jobs as well. And so I think putting that lens on our employment practices has definitely helped us in many ways, which we can get into today.
Wayne, my next question is for you. What opportunities do you see in companies strengthening and creating more responsible supply chains by partnering with non-profit organizations or the third sector?
Yeah, I think it's very, very important, but I will pause for a moment. You can tell the age difference between me and Anant. He's digital and I'm still on paper, so. Anyway, I think it's very, very important. It's very important to us as an organization. I think it's really about giving back to the communities that we serve. So basically, we live at a national level, but also at a local level. And I think it's really important that we pair with a lot of different, organizations, nonprofit organizations that really allow us to really be where our customer is. We love our customer. I think it's really important that we're there to give back. And I think also the previous panel made a comment about, I think applicants today, they want to know the ethos of an organization. Before they join, they want to make sure that my value system matches the value system of the organization I'm going to join. Because back when I was first interviewing for a job, it was more about just getting the job. Now it's like you're being interviewed by the applicants, so it's a two-way, kind of conversation. And I think it's really important, even in the boardroom, I think it's an expectation now that the boardrooms really want to know what is going to, whether you're private or public, they want to know what is your mantra and what are you going to be doing, and giving back to the communities. And then we also have at JCPenney, it's called BRTs, which are called Business Resource Teams. And they're comprised of our associates, whether they're in the stores or in our corporate office. And we have about 6 or 7, keep me honest out there at JCPenney folks, I think about 6 or 7. But it ranges from disabilities, women empowerment, pride, etc. What we do is we really create this resource for our associates to have something to lean into when they are actually trying to understand some of the things they're navigating, as well as give it back to our communities. So I think it's really, and we're starting. I think for us, there's a long runway of opportunity, and sometimes you have to be very careful. You don't want to overcommit what you don't need to do, but you want to make sure you do it. I think it's really important that you have that balance to make sure how do you take on what you know you can do versus trying to take everything on at the same time.
Thank you for that. Supei, my next question is for you. So you lived in India and Cambodia for a very long time to build Nomi network and build its workforce development programs. But before that, you also worked in the fashion industry at some very well-known companies. Congratulations on both, first of all. But can you tell us a little bit about the gaps and issues you saw in the supply chain when you were working as a buyer? And importantly, how does building up supply chain workers in India and Cambodia help solve that problem?
Yeah, so I had a very interesting, I would say, professional journey. I didn't come out and design the journey that way, but it just ended up, that allows me actually to be active participants in different part of supply chains. And for those who are not familiar with the lingo, right? So we have the upstream that focus on manufacturing, which is obviously people like Shahi and also the workers, right? Then we have downstream for people like JCPenney and Patagonia. So so by being an active participant, it really allows me to actually understand the system. Although it has been a while since I was in retail, but back in the days and being a buyer as well as a planner, I mean, my performance was really based on earning, right? So that's how I'm being evaluated. So, and then by coming to now sort of a little bit manufacturing side, so as a Nomi, we start engaging with the manufacturing side through the business, and prior to Nomi, I was also working for a design house that engaging with a different part of manufacturing around the world. So, and I understand different set of the challenges that manufacturing face. And as we developed workforce development program, and then we came to understand the workers and our clients' challenge, right? So, and I think what has made us unique is as we progressed and then we learn those different gaps, and then we find solutions for those gaps. And some of you guys have heard some of the skills gap, and then commonly we would think technical technical skill, right? And through the education. But there's a lot of soft skill, life skill as well. You know, the basic, what we take for granted. For example, critical thinking. I mean, problem solving, right? If they have never seen the type of problem we typically face, they wouldn't know. So those are just the gaps Nomi is able to identify and then say, can we close them? Let's close those, right? And then there is also emotional gap. And you guys talk about, we are dealing with a very specific group of people who have experienced trauma, right? And how do we, through the program design, to close those gaps? And what I'm really proud of encouraging is, from the US side, we're also engaging business people with the trauma-informed care, right? And then now we're closing the gap on the both sides of it. And I want to point out another thing is the technology gaps, right? And I don't know, I think most of us have multiple electronic equipment. So, but some of our clients don't even have access to the computer, right? And so we were able to say, hey, can we move our curriculum and to be digital? And then along the process, they actually learn the digital language, right? So, and then during the COVID, and then because we were able to transition to digitized curriculum, that allows us to continue the training. So we essentially, be able to put a bleed, what this is just a global issue and pandemic. And so instead of whining it. So those are, I think, all through, the learning and as well as understanding how each system and the stakeholder that along the supply chains that allow Nomi to have this unique position into how to bridge those gaps.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to take a brief pause and just remind everyone that we will be taking questions for our panelists from the audience at the end. So if you have any questions, please scan the QR code on your paper in your folder. You will be directed to the Summit website, and you can use the live Q&A button to submit your questions. Sarah, my next question is for you. How does Patagonia's human rights arm interact with sourcing? And what are the challenges you face at the raw materials level?
That's a great question. So at our company, the human rights arm we call a social impact team, and I work in the raw material part of our company, developing all the textiles and the trims that go into our product. The supply chain is super, super complicated. We call it a supply web sometimes, and so I feel very fortunate to have the social impact team to work with, because something Anant mentioned, 115,000 employees in one manufacturer in India, that's just one part of the supply chain, like Supei kind of laid out for us. And when I started visiting our suppliers and seeing, from the farm, from all the way up to the fabric, seeing how many hands are involved in creating textiles that go into product, it was mind-blowing, and we just feel a lot of responsibility for the workers in our space. And it's complex, and unfortunately, there's a lot of vulnerable population at risk. So the question about challenges, there's many. If there's a high demand for an item, we want to make sure to protect workers from having to work 80, 90, 100 hours a week in order to meet a demand from a brand, for example. Protecting fair wages, protecting migrant workers, for example, in regions, if companies have to import workers from other regions, protecting those workers because they're amongst the most vulnerable. So it's definitely fraught with challenges, and so we spend quite a lot of time together trying to work on solutions.
Thank you again for sharing that. Anant, how did the partnership with Nomi Network come about, and how is it set up? And if you could share a little bit about what challenges you faced or what you had to work through to make this happen, that would be very good. Also, what benefits have the factories in Nomi Network, at Shahi Exports, what benefits have they received from their partnership with Nomi Network?
Yeah, sure. So I met Diana many years ago through a common friend. He was actually a supply chain expert and guru that Shahi had gotten to know, and he was working closely with Nomi and introduced us. And then I got to understand some of Nomi's work. At the time, Shahi was, one of the programs I was working on at Shahi was around the investment in soft skill or life skill training for female government workers. It was through a program called PACE that Gap Inc. had introduced us to. And at that time, we were starting to see the benefits of this program. Typically in a factory, workers were trained on technical skills. They were taught how to sew and different operations. But there weren't many factories that were investing in the life skills or the general skills, you could say, of workers for many different reasons. And through the PACE program, we had actually realized that Shahi had managed to train some 10,000 people at the time that I had joined. So I was quite interested to know what was sustaining this program. I had the opportunity to partner with 2 professors. Subsequently, we started Good Business Lab, which you may have seen in my title as well. And what we did was we actually conducted an impact evaluation of this training program. So it was a experimental design. We used a randomized controlled trial methodology, and we were able to determine not just the social impacts of the soft skill training program, but also the business impacts. We saw an increase in attendance, we saw an increase in productivity, and in terms of the bottom line, we were able to calculate over 250% ROI from investing in soft skill training. So I think that made us realize the value of this type of investment in workforce development. And so our partnership with Nomi, it's based on a lot of common values, and obviously our approach towards women's advancement. And so the way it's structured is that Shahi provides training facilities and resources to Nomi Network's candidates through our skill development arm. And these include both technical skills, sewing skills, but also any additional soft skills or employment skills. After that, we have we have started to integrate Nomi Network candidates into our workforce. So we offer them employment opportunities in our factories. And once, if and when they join, we have the opportunity to kind of provide mentorship, make sure we're supporting them. Many of the candidates are interstate migrants, so they get trained or are from different states in India, and then they migrate to cities like Bangalore, which in India can feel like a completely different country. We have so many languages, different cuisines, and so on. So we provide additional support through migration support centers, and we work with other NGOs and partners to kind of provide this mentorship. And just to come back to a point I was making earlier, we're also now looking at how we're monitoring and evaluating the impacts of these programs. One of the things that we've realized as a company at Shahi, and a lot of this has come through our work with Good Business Lab, is that oftentimes in the business industry, in industry, we don't often use evidence to guide our decision making, especially when it comes to social impact. I think on a previous panel, it was mentioned that measuring social impact can be hard in itself. And then doing it in a business setting, oftentimes businesses move really fast. They don't have time to sort of think about that. However, one thing that's really interesting, in the garment factory setting, for example, we have very, granular data that we can use. And we can essentially look at everything from attendance, productivity. If you're working in an assembly line and your target is 10 pieces an hour and you make 8, that's 80% efficiency. So we can really assess through those data that the factory collects the impacts of different programs. So we're still learning about the potential benefits of working on this program. And I think that if we can find both programs that support workers and provide social impacts, but then also add value to businesses, that's sort of the sweet spot that we're focusing on. There's obviously a lot of challenges. You have cultural differences, working with migrant workers. As much as the investment in training and developing the Nomi network candidates, there's also sensitization and efforts to kind of create the environment that would make workers feel included and comfortable. So I think that's an ongoing process as well. But in terms of, it's too soon to say the actual business impacts. I wouldn't speak on them, without rigorous evidence. However, anecdotally, what we're starting to see is definitely identity shift. A lot of the Nomi network graduates, you're seeing the independence that they're gaining from the jobs. You're seeing they're becoming role models in their communities. That's just very positive to see. We do get the sense that they are, highly productive. We're seeing lower rates of absenteeism, and as I was saying, a lot more social responsibility that they garner through their work.
Thank you. Wayne, my next question's for you. What criteria does JCPenney have to vet global vendors, and how does this criteria help in uncovering, human rights issues, for instance?
Let me start by saying he was the hard one to follow. That response, amazing. And this is the reason why he's in our top 10 of our vendor base. So obviously, I applaud Shahi for all the great work they're doing. That's actually part of our vetting process. So again, I'll kind of think in threes, I'll speak in threes. So we go through a process that is comprised of vetting, auditing, and measuring. So the first is, when they say vetting, it's almost like tell me what you do. Okay, so we go through a rigorous process. We have actually 6 offices overseas, and the teams go into the facilities, and it's called responsible sourcing. They vet through all the different details of what the vendor is telling them that they do. And the audit process actually show me what you're doing, as opposed to just telling me. And really we go through with third party as well as our own teams to really better understand what are all the components. So whether it is wages and welfare, whether it is women empowerment. And women empowerment actually is a broad statement, but also we break it down to, is there financial literacy programs? Are there women leaders? Are they just sitting behind a sewing machine? And what's your percentage of how you actually have women in leadership roles? Also, whether it's prenatal care, and just all those things. It's almost like a blurred approach because most of the workers live nearby the facility or live on premise if they're in dormitories. So you have to make sure, how do you kind of create this blurred approach so they really understand, because most of what they learn is really from the facility they work at. So that's going to be key. That's their source of education. So I think it's really, really important that we give them that access to having research. And the last thing is measurement. I think there was a gentleman, I think Jonathan, you mentioned about scorecards. Yes. So we have a scorecard process now that's much more robust. So measuring on-time delivery, measuring cost, that's our day job. Now it's really women empowerment, we have ESG, we have social auditing, and actually the weight of those parts of the scorecard are actually much higher. So back in the day, on-time delivery was a very strong weight. Now it's like, you should just always be on time. That's part of what you do. So now it's really like, what is your next level of being more green, being more friendly to people and planet? So I think for us, it's really going in that direction, which really then makes our sourcing decisions based on those scorecard ratings. So we go through every 6 months, it's a grow, maintain, decline, or exit. And it's all based on those criteria. So it's not a subjective, I like this vendor, don't like that vendor. It's very much, the data is really much in these scorecards, and it gives us much more of an objective way of having conversations with our vendor partners.
I agree. I think it's very difficult to have very easy conversations with suppliers. So everything that you can do to make that easier is
Absolutely.
very, very helpful. Supei, as manufacturing now becomes the primary entry-level job creator for the labor workforce, we are seeing a tension between providing living wages and meeting market demand. And I understand Nomi Network plays a very critical role here. Could you share a little bit about how Nomi Network addresses this challenge?
So first of all, I want to say we really appreciate working with manufacturers such as Shahi, because not only they say, hey, we have an opening, let's place the job. We actually, in the beginning of 2020, we had a multiple workshop of Nomi and Shahi team come together, and we literally laid it out, what are all the challenges, what are all the needs, because we not only represent clients, but we work with the community. So we understand their family need, the community challenge, So because we are in a unique position of understanding how each of the player, because the fact that I used to be in the retail and the manufacturers, and then we said, hey, what are the challenges? Let's lay out on the tables. But we represent a voice that often would exclude it in the conversation. And that is critical. And so because of that, we were able to actually co-create a program together. It wasn't just like us thinking in our little, in the AC room and actually say, oh, this is probably what the workers need. We go deep into the community, right? And that allows us to say, okay, the tension, the reality is always going to exist. There's no such a thing as a tension-free world. It doesn't. But let's figure out how we actually address the tensions. So, and I think that's very exciting because you talk about MEL, monitoring evaluation, and also from the impact investor is talking about it. But yet, Nomi is tackling how do we evaluate the community, family, and our client's success. Now, how do we incorporate all that? And that's the exciting part. We just, earlier Anant and I were just talking about, let's touch base quarterly. Let's get our team together, and let's not work in silo of evaluating the impact that, we want your business to thrive because we know it's such a critical part of it, but let's making sure our clients and the community are thriving because we have evidence from Patagonia, they all work together, right? So what I would love to do is as we engage more and more in this conversation on the business side of it, and how can Nomi actually say, hey, can we play part of it? Can we come together and actually discuss and co-create that together? And have a multiple workshop, because I think conversation like this is so precious, but I think the follow-up is even more important. So, and then I just want to close out by answering that question, right? The tension of living wage and the manufacturer is real because we all experience everything is going up. The cost is more, right? But the reality is along the supply chain, while upstream is experiencing that tension, downstream also. And that tension also impacts, unfortunately, upstream as well. So how can we have more opportunities to come together, not only have a conversation, but let's actually co-create that together. And I think that's the ultimate solution to release those tensions.
Thank you. I think we have time to take questions from the audience. I believe someone will hand me the questions that were submitted through the website.
They're coming.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So I'm just going to state the question and then we can just have all the panelists talk about it. So Anant shared about the ROI that soft skills have and the long-term support and value that they provide to an organization. What would you tell companies so they understand that it is always a win to have soft skills? Sarah?
Like soft skills related to
soft skills related, like imparting soft skills to workers and organizations who have the technical skills to build long-term value.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I think it really resonates kind of across from the supply chain to the internal organization and to consumers as well. Like we've been working for years with fair trade, for example, and that the ability to connect our customers with the actual people, making the product, and knowing that your money is going to support above and beyond, really resonates with consumers looking for that. So I think that it's really important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anant?
So what I wanted to say about this is that I think that oftentimes, especially in labor-intensive businesses or low-wage sort of industries, we see that workers are seen as a cost as opposed to an asset. And I think one of the things that that I've been working on and thinking about is how do we create that shift? How do we make people, management, business owners, realize the value of the workforce that they have? Many of us are fortunate to work in companies that do care for their employees and provide a lot of benefits and a lot of support and so on. But when you look at garment factories, for example, because of the tensions and the challenges that the companies can face, it's hard sometimes for management to see their workers as assets, the way that you would look at your machines or your equipment. You want to invest in their maintenance, you want to support them, and so on. So one of the ways to do that is to invest in life skill training, soft skill training. As I mentioned, the PACE program showed us that we were able to actually evaluate it and create the evidence needed to motivate our company to scale it up. Today we've trained almost 90,000 women in the PACE program. It's a 70-hour training. And one of the things earlier on that we heard from our workers who had gone through this program, the graduates, they said, hey, this program has been very transformational, it's been very impactful to our lives. However, our environment hasn't changed much. The people around us, our supervisors. So we realized, yes, this is a big opportunity, something we completely missed. We're training workers on the front line, but we're not training their managers. And now they're more aware of certain life skills than even their managers. In the garment factory setting, oftentimes line supervisors are promoted because of their technical capabilities. They have to instruct workers on how to do certain operations. But they're also managers, right? They have 40 people in their line. So we developed a soft skill training for supervisors. It was a sort of abbreviated version of the PACE program. And the impacts from that program we were able to evaluate as well. They were so high that they exceeded all of our expectations. We were almost embarrassed when we looked at the results and we saw that it had over 4,000% ROI. So these things that are traditionally seen as maybe, social impact or CSR or so on, they can actually be used as business tools, and investing in soft skills is a great example.
Wayne, what do you think about the importance of soft skills?
Yeah, I think for us it's a very natural, because we're over 120 years old. We've actually found them on the golden rule. So for us, it's just part of our culture of how we really, do unto others as you want to see unto yourselves. I think we just carry that through our entire supply chain as we work with suppliers and whatnot. And I really think that, the people today, our associates today, they want to know the why behind the why. And that's where I think that software piece is really paramount, because years ago, when I first started doing this, this work, it was a completely different environment. You had no technology, sewers had their heads down. Now they want to know a lot more, and you can feel the environment is much more from, there's nurseries in the facilities, there's a lot more extenders that I think they never had the opportunity, never thought that would even exist. I think there's just the natural. And even when they go to apply for a particular job at a factory, they want to know, is my dormitory air conditioned? Is there a basketball court? And all these things now, which is a great problem to have, but it really gives back to the workers and the communities.
Thank you for sharing that. Supei, what do you think about soft skills for creating long-term value?
Yeah, I think the creation of Nomi is really from the heart of seeing, every woman in the world has opportunity and to reach their full potential, right? It doesn't matter where you were born, it doesn't matter your economical status, right? So, and as we work with our clients, then I'm going to also piggyback what Anant was saying is we realize, wait a second, okay, so in order for us to have a good outcome from these training activities, we need to have a good trainers. We need to have a good project team. We need to have a good program team to actually oversee all this activity. So as a result, we realize there is multiple layers of development that need to happen even within, I would say, part of the supply chain, right? So what Nomi does is we actually focus on train up the trainer program now. And I love to actually, and this year I received some of the report, and then the trainer actually, first of all, After 7 o'clock, when we say, okay, you're done with the training, and that's after 9 hours, they did not want to leave. They want to continue. They're like, we are learning so much. This is something we don't even know. And these are actually college graduates who have the passion to give back to the community, but yet they were not receiving that within their education. So there's gaps we also have to fill within that social sector levels. And then so we are like, oh my goodness, 9 o'clock? And the best part is now they are using that in their own life and practice, right? So now you can truly see impact of mentoring that is now developing as a result of you are investing each layer. And that's always our commitment, is we want to make sure we're not just having this broad conversation, but we continue to what? Go vertically. We don't lose our roots. We don't lose our missions and how and why we started is the community. And that community can be in Dallas, that community can be in India where you might never see them, that community can be in Cambodia, and hopefully around every part of this world. So.
Yeah. Thank you everyone. Thank you Sarah, Anant, Wayne and Supei for this very relevant and vibrant discussion. And thank you to the audience for listening into our discussion about how we can leverage supply chains to create equity across tiers in our business and across global supply chains. And of course, for the social impact efforts of a company. If you would like to hear more from the panelists, please find them during the break and have a very interesting conversation, because I will.